This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Tool, Steve, on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tap in, birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go. I bet
You
him
did
at,
too?
I bet him at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
I love Brian Harmon at 3.5% this week.
All right, welcome in Inside Golf Podcast, Genesis Scottish Open betting and DFS preview. Happy 4th of July. I am here in the Hamptons for 4th of July weekend. What has happened to the place that I know and love? 4th of July weekend in the Hamptons might as well be renamed Sit in Your Car in Traffic Weekend. If you want to spend 4th of July in the Hamptons now, which appears to be one of the more desirable places to spend 4th of July in America, something I've been doing for a large portion of my life, you are not celebrating America anymore on this weekend. You are celebrating traffic and long lines to get anything. If you want a coffee, a pastry, a reservation at a nice dinner restaurant, it is a absolute zoo here. But it's also beautiful weather and a beautiful setting. And I can't wait for so many more wonderful people to encroach upon this beautiful place for the U.S. Open next year at Shinnecock. I drove right by Shinnecock yesterday. They're having their member this weekend. And let me tell you, the U.S. Open next year here is going to fucking rule. I'm actually going to lay down I just love Shinnecock. I'm laying down a marker that I think it has Pinehurst, Kiowa Island potential. I think those were two of like the better major championship venues that I remember over the last 5 to 10 years. Of course, part of that was who won and the leaderboard, but I'm not as leaderboard heavy as some others are in terms of my criteria for what makes a major championship. Like there are a lot of people that looked at Oakmont and were like, I'm just out on Oakmont because it didn't produce the leaderboard that I was looking for. That was not my opinion of Oakmont. I think Oakmont was tremendous, but I don't think it's as good as Shinnecock. I think Shinnecock's going to be better. And I think people are really going to love it. I mean, it's not like people aren't familiar with it. 2018 wasn't that long ago when Brooks won. But anyway, I just got reminded of how excited I am for next year's U.S. Open because we don't have a lot. It's time to start looking ahead and forward because there are not a lot more golf tournaments to get excited about in the year of 2025. In fact, I would argue there's 2 more of them the next 2 weeks. But anyway, that's a podcast for another day. Quick couple of items of business here before we dive into the Scottish Open. Number one, I apologize again that I don't have my sound mixer and microphone. This will be my last podcast that you will have to suffer through. Lower than you deserve audio quality. My sound mixer broke when I got to New York last week. It was due for a replacement anyway. I travel a lot and I bring my recording equipment with me. And just after a lot of travel, you know, it just kind of gets worn down and pushed around in luggage. And, but my new sound mixer has arrived. And so I'm recording like 4 podcasts tomorrow. We will have my regular sound mixer, up for those, including a great podcast with Joseph Lamagna in preparation for the Open Championship, as well as the Monday DFS show. I'll be back to using my microphone for all of that. So apologies again, but number 2 podcast is obviously presented by Inside Sports Network. If you didn't sign up to get in on the tennis winnings last week, we just had a member, shout out Jake, win $20,000 a tennis GPP. And our tennis Discord right now for Wimbledon is probably just as active as our golf Discord right now. So there's still time to hop in. We're only in round 4 of Wimbledon. There's still a lot of tennis left, and this is a really good time to get inundated with our tennis product, and then before you know it, you will be a tennis sharp by the US Open. And I think that's what I would recommend the most about our tennis product is that you can join and you really don't have to know anything about tennis to win money in tennis DFS and gambling. It's not like football where you are competing against so many people that know a lot about football and have great projections and have been watching football for dozens of years and playing football DFS it's not like that. It is a completely wide open, brand new, unsaturated, underdeveloped market. And that's why we said to ourselves, let's take advantage here. Let's be the tennis people. Let's be the place where if you want to win money in tennis, we're providing the best information for that. That has been my business model that I have a lot of confidence in and has worked out quite well for us. But I would say Ricci's just does a really incredible job teaching. Like it's a place where you can kind of come in without really too much knowledge of tennis at all, and you will pick it up very, very quickly. And again, the reason why we've invested more time and energy into our tennis product is mainly 2 reasons. I mean, number one, like I said, no one else is doing this. There's no competition. I mean, we kind of feel that way in golf as well because no other place is even like attempting to talk about golf courses or break down golf courses in the way that we are at Inside Sports Network. But tennis is even more. And it's such a kind of a, like I said, an underdeveloped DFS product that there's such a huge edge in this because the market for tennis is so niche that, you can pretty much just hop in and follow somebody like Ricci who really knows what he's doing and has won now hundreds of thousands of dollars betting and playing tennis DFS. That, it's the type of contests that you can actually come in and be like, wow, with Ricci's information and cores, like I actually have a real chance to win here. Unlike something, say football, that I think is a little bit more intimidating and has like a higher barrier for entry for new players. And I think a lot of what we're trying to do at ISN is we know that, there's a lot of high stakes, really sharp players in our Discord. But we're really also trying to have it be like super approachable and a place for people that are just trying to learn golf and tennis DFS. We're going to spend a lot of time during the off season. We can't do it right now because every week I'm so focused on putting out good content for the golf tournament that's about to happen. But during the off season, because I am not really much of a football or a best ball player, we will have a lot of football and best ball content from other members of our team. But for me, what I'm going to spend a lot of the off season doing is like a lot of just general DFS strategy content, and trying to help people just become better DFS players and learn some of the big macro concepts of how I break down golf courses and handicapping and golf course architecture and stuff like that. As opposed, there's not going to be as tournaments. So I can talk about some of those higher level concepts that my goal in doing that is that a lot of new people will just get better at DFS and get excited about playing golf DFS and betting golf, if they have kind of a stronger base knowledge of how the sport totally works. Because once we're in the middle of the season, I understand how it can be kind of like, intimidating and difficult to just like jump right in when all I'm talking about on these podcasts are like the agronomy and strokes gained and stuff like that. And if you're just a beginner playing DFS for the first time, it can be intimidating to jump right into such a high level of analysis. I'm going to switch things up over the fall swing and cater to, I think, a different type of player. But the other aspect why I really think the tennis stuff is great for us is there's no other sports going on right now. So if you're just looking for something to sweat, and I know I'm speaking to a bunch of degenerates out there watching this podcast, you know, you just need something to gamble on over the next 2 months because there's no football, there's no basketball. Even golf is big time slowing down after the British Open. So I'm telling you, after the British Open, the best thing to gamble on over the next month and a half is the tennis US Open. You know, and if you want to be the best prepared to win money at the tennis US Open, then I promise you should join Inside Sports Network because we have the best tennis info. Rishi actually breaks things down tennis wise the way I do with golf. And, if you want to have a real chance at winning money, like so many of our other members, hop in that tennis Discord. It is $0 more to get all of our tennis stuff. We didn't price it as an add-on. So for $40 a month, you are essentially getting what I believe is the best and most informative golf product, as well as really the only tennis product around. You can ask any of our members. You don't have to listen to me. Ask pretty much anyone in our tennis Discord. They will tell you themselves. Okay, last thing on ISN as well. One last item of business. One thing we have been discussing behind the scenes a lot is the idea of moving this Sunday golf course preview podcast to behind the paywall. Because, a lot of the members feel like I might be giving too much away in this Sunday preview. And there are a lot of moochers that like to listen to the Sunday preview, figure out how the course is going to play, use that predominant narrative in their podcasts or in their tweeting, use that predominant narrative about how the golf course is going to play, and then that affects ownership, and you get so many of all of the best plays at inflated ownership. And even though all of the really good stuff is in the Discord and on the Wednesday premium show, when I really solidify my opinion on the golf course and my player pool, and every single week there is a ton that changes on my opinion of the players and the golf course between Monday and Wednesday once the weather updates and I see ownership and see how the industry is building this week and what other narratives pop up. But there's still objectively a lot of great stuff on the Sunday show. So so again, like you can still, I think, get a lot of great stuff on this Sunday show every single week. The downside of putting it behind the paywall, however, is that the Sunday show is really the only way that we market the company. So I know, if some people are like, oh, bummed out that I talk about the company a little bit on the Sunday show. I'm sorry, it's our entire marketing. That's the only, I don't ask anyone else on my team to, go out of their way to really market the company. We don't do Google ads or anything. We don't tweet a bunch of stuff. We don't run big advertising campaigns or anything like that. The entire marketing for ISN and the entire way that people find out about our product is me talking about and sometimes tweeting the company for about 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes on my Sunday show. That's our entire marketing for the company. And I'm fine with that. We've saved a lot of money that way because it works. But, if we were to put the Sunday podcast behind the paywall, then we would lose pretty much our entire marketing department. How would people find out about the company? And that is the double-edged sword aspect of it. But I think a good solution that we have been thinking about, and also something that I think a lot of listeners are going to be super excited about and hopefully appreciate, for the Open Championship next week, this is important, we are going to put the pod behind the paywall, but it's going to be free to sign up for a week. Okay. So if you want to listen to the pod next week, as well as Hold the Green with Steve and Capper's breakdown of Royal Portrush, which I'm not going to sit here and tell you to listen to like hours of all of our ISN content. But if you do have the time, I couldn't recommend Steve and Capper on Hold the Green any higher. I mean, obviously, because I hired them and gave them both ownership in my company, I believe deeply in what they provide as well. And so if I'm going behind the paywall, they're going behind the paywall as well. But we are making the week free. So, you have to sign up for ISN for a week if you want. But we're giving you a promo code where it's free, so you don't pay any money. So not only for free will you get all of the podcasts, but you will also get my ownership for next week. That's huge for a major championship. Plus my 3,000 word plus article on Royal Portrush, my core and my player pool. By the way, this week at the John Deere, probably one of my best player pools of the season. Entering today, I'm leading a big contest by 10 points. Actually, not really that much. I mean, the contest, we'll talk about it later in the pod, but hopefully I can get that first GPP win of this season this week. And access to the Wednesday premium show also for free, which in my humble opinion is the best DFS show that does the best job of really actually talking about and breaking down the weather, the golf course, the ownership, building strategy. And the reason why I think that DFS show is so amazing is because you get the three of us. And between Rishi, Kyle, and I can tell you right now, say it with my full chest, every single week between the three of us, you're going to get the nuts. Sometimes it may, we switch up. Like, for example, I had a terrible week at the Rocket, and Kyle is out there, hitting pot guider first round leader, 3x in DFS, pot guider win outright, and he had Grazerman too. And then Rishi casually finishes second in a big contest and wins $50,000. This week, I don't know how Kyle and Rishi are doing in DFS. I think they're doing okay, maybe not as well as me, but I say to them, okay, you guys picked up the slack for me last week. It's my turn now. And I have now one of my best player pools of the season. So, between the three of us, you're just always going to get some really, really great stuff. We actually we really try and do a good job of putting you in the best position to win and covering every base. So that means spending time on weather, spending time on ownership, spending time on building strategy, actually answering questions to people with trying to give really informed answers and giving people the time of day. So anyway, point being, if you sign up for ISN next week, you're getting a ton of amazing content for the British Open. The only thing that you won't be able to do is message in the Discord. And we are doing that for one very obvious main reason, and that is to protect our monthly and yearly members that talk golf in our Discord every single week. And frankly, we are going to do that going forward, where there's no longer, it's getting too big, where there's no longer, if you're signing up for the weekly at ISN, that's going to be a separate category in our Discord where you can't message in the Discord if you're only on a weekly subscription. You can still observe in the Discord and see everything, but the reason why the real reason why we're doing is that the real conversation, once you start to get bigger and stuff, I really want to make an effort to prioritize the people that have supported us for day one and are willing to give a longer commitment to us, whether that's a month or a year or whatever, at least a month. I think the people that should have the ability to control the conversation in the Discord, I want to prioritize the people that are really true to ISN and have been supporting us from day one and are willing to, give us a longer commitment than just a weekly subscription. Because once you get to a certain amount of members, I don't want for the Open Championship week next week, all these people join for the free week for the Open Championship and start clogging up the Discord with all of their questions and comments and opinions. And then the regular members that have been here, you know, messaging in the Discord, and we all at ISN have a real relationship to and talk golf with every week, them being like, what the fuck? I can't even get my messages out because there are a bunch of new people in there just spewing all of their shit. Don't worry about that, regular ISN members. Anybody who joins for the week at the Open Championship, if they want to message in the Discord, they're going to have to sign up for a longer commitment like you guys did. With that being said, if you want to sign up for the week, you're not going to be able to message in the Discord. But if you want to ask me a question or ask anyone else on our team a question, you can still DM us, and guess what? We'll answer it. I'm very busy for the next 2 weeks with the Open Championship, but if you sign up and ask me a question, we'll answer it. Or you can always join us on one of the live shows in the chat, ask the question in the chat, and we'll cover it on the show. I think that's it. I think that's it. So hopefully, I mean, the hope is you see how good the content is behind the paywall, and you see how fun our Discord channel is, and you say to yourself, okay, I got a taste of what it is like and how essential this tool is to have. If I'm playing golf DFS, I want to be part of this community. I want to post in the Discord and sweat with these guys and ask questions and make fun of dumb golfers and irrationally overreact to every golf shot. I'm going to make a longer commitment to these guys. Or not. You could also literally just get all of our content for the Open Championship for free, and then cancel your membership before the weekends, and you're not going to be charged a single thing. We, of course, hope you won't do that. But we know that some people will, no matter what, even if we absolutely murder the content and get absolutely every take correct, and have just insane call after insane call, people will still just never want to give a longer term commitment and pay. And that's totally fine with us too. That's still why we will always have a plethora of free stuff. And if you want to just watch the free stuff, hopefully you appreciate that we'll always have a commitment to having at least some modicum of free content. I personally think that the stuff that we put out for free is, you know, still really good as well. And I don't say this a lot enough, but it always means a lot to us if you can shoot us a thumbs up on this video. If the stuff that I'm about to tell you on the Scottish Open is helpful, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, retweet the podcast if you are on Twitter, or leave a comment. That stuff matters more than you know. In fact, comment on this YouTube video who, let's do winner of the Scottish Open. Okay, I don't even need winning score because we're going to learn about the weather, but just comment your winner of the Scottish Open, and I will go back on this Sunday pod next week. And anybody who got the winner correctly, I'll give you something. I'm trying to think what people might want. I'll give a gift card for anybody that gets the winner right. I'll give a gift card to our ISN store for like $50 at least. Okay. So winner, comment the winner of the Scottish Open on this YouTube video. Okay, finally, John Deere. I'm going to talk about more on Monday, but I've got it covered this week, guys. I had a really poor half-assed week for the Rocket Mortgage, where I was on a golf trip till Tuesday night, so I didn't really do any of my regular weekly research. And I put together like a half-assed pool and betting card, and I got crushed. It was my worst week of the season. So I came back this week and I said, well, I had one of my best weeks of the season at the Travelers. I almost gave all of it back at the Rocket. I want to get through this 3-tournament stretch of Bentgrass Birdie Fest season with a big W. So I have to have a good week at the John Deere. So I really locked in and grinded. And what do you know? 60% of my pool right now currently sits in the top 30 of the golf tournament. As soon as Ben Griffin missed that cut, we warned you about the Ben Griffin thing, that this guy was like getting the Scotty treatment on ownership, and you cannot play Ben Griffin at 35%. Repeat after me. You have got to take your projection goggles off and realize that if you, well, listen, there's many people that play very differently and win at DFS. So I'm not going to put a blanket statement on that. But in my opinion, of the best way to win at PGA DFS, you cannot ever be playing Ben Griffin at 35%. Never. No. Or JT Poston or Jason Day at over $10,000. I think all three guys in the 10K range missed the cut. And I went insanely heavy on Denny McCarthy, Davis Thompson, who hopefully wins for me, Chris Gotterup, and Lucas Glover. And then, of course, we did well at the bottom with Nate Lashley being our big 6K sleeper, a shit ton of Kurt Kitayama. Shout out Rager at the Kitayama place. Our members know what I'm talking about there with that little bit. Rico Hoey, Doug Gim, Kevin Roy, Eric Cole. Put it this way. Anytime you see Kurt Kitayama, Rico Hoey, and Doug Gim having a good week, you can pretty much know that I'm having a great week. Although those guys are still fucking hilarious to me. They're such idiots. And particularly Rico Hoey and Doug Gim. I don't know if those guys will ever win a golf tournament, despite being one of the best flushers on the PGA Tour. Like, you understand, I track Doug Gim and Rico Hoey every week, and this is an easy thing that you'll miss if you're not paying attention to those losers. They hit so many iron shots that like do not leave the pin and just like are just straight dead at the pin, and they stop at 6 or 7 feet and they miss putt. Rico Hoey is the worst putt. I mean, literally statistically, he ranks 145th out of 148 players in putting from 5 to 15 feet. He misses so many 5 to 8 footers. So many 5 to 8 footers. And same thing with Doug Gim, who I have at 100 to 1 this week. The same thing happened at the Honda Classic, is sometimes maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And he's been a bet for me so I have like the best Doug Gim radar. I just know that 2 or 3 times a year. Listen, I play him a lot no matter what, but you can count on Doug Gim 2 or 3 times a year. He is just going to flush like crazy. And he was in first place of this tournament. He had a bad round on Saturday, but he was in first place at the fucking John Deere, a putting contest, losing strokes putting. Okay. And obviously over time, over the course of the tournament, if you can't make a putt at the fucking John Deere Classic, that's going to catch up with you, Doug Gim. But Doug Gim's ball striking in round 1, where he gained over 5 strokes on approach, one of the best approach rounds I've seen in a long time, since Doug Gim did the exact same thing at the Honda Classic. So anyway, it's a great week for my guys. I made a huge mistake though. Usually what I play in DFS for a normal week is I usually do the $100 single entry, the $10 18 max. I love that contest. I will always ride for the $10 18 max, although I wish they just made it a 20 max, because that's the perfect contest that I'm looking for, where, the investment and entry fee is around $200 and you get to build 20 lineups. Anyway, I love that contest. I'll play in the $33 single entry, the $3 20 max. I usually invest around $350 in entry fees in DFS every week. Some people will say that's really low. I have a take on unit shaming. I have a take on that stuff. I may not do it in this podcast because let's get to the genesis and stuff. But anyway, point being, I usually invest around between $250 to $400, $500 for the majors in DFS every week, plus about $1,000 in betting every week. Sometimes less in DFS, actually, where sometimes instead of playing like the $10 18 max, I'll just throw 20 hand-built lineups in the big $5 if the account's a little bit lower on DraftKings. And anyway, for these Bentgrass Birdie Fest, where I actually feel like I have a little bit less of an edge this week because it's harder to predict strokes gained putting on this golf course. But like for this week, instead of playing in the regular $18 20 max, or the $10 18 max, or the $3 20 max, I played in the $4 20 max, which I kind of said to myself, okay, good. I want a little bit of a bigger investment, but I kind of mindlessly just clicked on this new contest because usually there isn't a $4 20 max. Usually it's just the $3 20 max because I always look at things that are 20 max because I like to hand build about 20 lineups. And so I'm always searching for contests that I could kind of max out and get the most bang for my buck with the talent that I have of making 20 hand built lineups. Because as you know, if you put 20 hand built lineups in the big $5, you're competing against guys that have 150 lineups. And so my win equity with those 20 hand built lineups is not going to be as much if I put them in the big $5 compared to if I put them in a 20 max and I'm competing against guys that can only make the same amount of lineups as me. But so anyway, I put these lineups in the $4 20 max. And it's a much smaller prize pool. There's only about 2,200 lineups in that contest, where if you come in first place against 2,200 lineups, it's a good job. It's a good lineup. Like it's a contest win. It's kind of a mini, barely a GPP, but it's a contest win. I'll say this: if the lineup was in the $3 20 max with 100,000 entries, it'd be winning that too. It'd be winning the $100 single entry by 30 points. I don't know how it would be doing in the $5, but anyway, if I run away with this contest and win this contest, or even finish second or third, like walk away with like $600, $400 for second or third place. And when you have the nuts like this, it's not going to happen every week. Like you're going to have you look to have a player pool this good a couple times a season, and you really have to cash in on it, and win thousand. You want to win a contest or come in top 5 or 10 in a contest, because a lot of weeks in DFS, you're kind of, the game is just set up for you to lose. So I think a mindful and very self-aware DFS player, and we were talking about this in the Discord earlier this weekend with Rick, who's like a great high stakes DFS player. He's an awesome member of our Discord. And, he was talking about, he has played DFS 24 weeks this season, and he has only been profitable in 7 out of the 24 weeks. So 17 out of the 24 weeks, he's lost his money. But he has 2 contest wins, and he's having one of the best DFS seasons he's ever had. And so I think that should kind of be a lesson for your expectations in DFS, is that what you're really looking for is that even the best DFS players in the world are going to lose a lot more weeks that they're going to win. What DFS is really all about is, when you have those good weeks, maximizing the most that you can get out of those good weeks, because they're only going to come a couple times a season, even if you're a really, really good DFS player. And let me tell you, I do not think that I did the best job of maximizing a week where I totally had the nuts. But the last thing I'll say on this, and then trust me, we'll get to the Scottish Open, is, so sometimes I'll get not really. It's not really criticism or seriously, but like, I to answer the question of why I don't invest more money in DFS every week when I realistically could. What I try and do, my philosophy for this, and this is just what works for me, not financial advice. Anyone's welcome to do whatever they want. But how I look at golf betting and DFS, because it's my job to teach and create content around golf betting and golf DFS. What I love, what I am passionate about is teaching other people and talking about golf courses and breaking down slates and creating content around it and talking to people and again, like breaking down golf courses and analyzing golf courses and analyzing players and picking players. If I wanted to like be a professional DFS player and not give any of my information away, that's a different route that I could go down. But the route that I specifically chose of wanting to go down is, creating content around PGA DFS slates and creating content around breaking down golf courses. So for PGA DFS, the DFS that I actually play, I try and put myself, because it's not a big part of my life really in terms of like the things that I care about. I care so much more about the company doing well and people in the company making money than I do personally. And what I try and do every week is I say to myself, okay, if everything goes wrong, if I lose everything, what is the amount? And this is a good example of this because this happened at the Rocket Mortgage where I basically like profited barely any money, $50 or something like that. I try and figure out what is the number where if I lost everything on a given week, it would not affect my mood one bit. It would not affect how I go about my day. It would not make me grumpy and have me take it out on my girlfriend. It would not make me be upset or angry or, what's that number? And for me, it's about $1,500. So, if I lost $1,500 in a week, I don't care at all. Like it doesn't affect anything about me. But if I was to invest more, it would probably start getting to the point where if I lost all of my money in that week, I'd be upset. I'd be upset, right? And does that lower my upside, right? Does it put me in a position where on the good weeks, maybe I'm winning a couple $1,000 as opposed to the payoff if I have a really good week, winning tens of thousands of dollars? Yes, for sure. But again, I'm not trying to have any of my income really be being a gambler or a DFS player. What I'm trying to make money off of is the company, and having other people join the company and do well in betting and DFS. And so, I definitely see people get angry, really, really angry in PGA DFS, and that's totally fine. But I just put myself, because I'm not a big tilter, I just don't get angry. And a lot of the reason why I don't get angry is because I'm not investing a lot of money. And if you're investing a lot of money, I totally get it why you would tilt. I would tilt really hard too if the stakes were higher for me. But the reason why I keep the stakes a little bit lower for me is just because I don't want to put myself in a position where if things go wrong, it really affects my mood. Because I've seen, if people lose a lot of money, they get really angry and upset, and it can affect their mood. And it could make them, struggle and bleed into other aspects of their life. And I don't want to put myself in that position where if things went horribly wrong and I started losing and went on a losing streak, and golf's a really volatile sport, that could happen, where you have a stretch where the board feels like it's in Latin, because it's now things are coming very clearly to me. But I had stretches even this year, a couple months ago, where I had 2 or 3 weeks in a row where, I lost most of my money, and it felt bad, but financially for me, it was never, it never affected my day-to-day. The money that I was losing is not enough for me ever to it affect my ability to do the things that I love, which is, spending time with my girlfriend, traveling with my girlfriend, and traveling to play great golf courses with my best golf buddies. And I always try and put myself in a position with gambling and DFS where if I go through a cold stretch or if things go horribly wrong, it has no other impact on the rest of my life. So, and I think that's like a good barometer maybe to get the most enjoyment out of PGA DFS, but that's just what works for me. Okay, let's talk about the Scottish Open. So, we're going across the pond, and this is the only co-sanctioned event between the PGA and DP World Tour. So you're going to get some DP World Tour players in there. Let me just say, I'm so fired up for this. I know the first 40 minutes of this pod was like all this other housekeeping stuff, but the content this week for the Scottish Open is going to be amazing. And I'm going to use the last 20 minutes to give you a bunch of stuff on this golf course and some early leans of the players that I really like. But this is the one golf tournament that they have before the Open Championship next week. And Steve Bamford will come on the podcast and we'll do our regular Royal Portrush big deep dive on Friday morning. And the Scottish Open has an amazing field this year. Scotty Scheffler's playing, Rory McIlroy's playing, Colin Morikawa's in the field, Tommy Fleetwood, of course, who has been tremendous at the Renaissance Club, is playing. Justin Thomas, Ludwig Aubert, who I really like this week as kind of, I don't know if he's forgotten a lead, but Ludwig Aubert, Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, who's playing some great golf. It's just a great field. Robert McIntyre, my guy. Bobby Mack is like slowly becoming my favorite. If he won the U.S. Open, my oh my, that would have been really cool. So Robert McIntyre 1 year at 18 under par. Rory, the year before, won at 15 under par over Bob McIntyre. Xander won at 7 under par in 2022 over my guy Kurt Kitayama. And then those were the 3 years where it was a PGA Tour and DP World Tour co-sanctioned event. So those were the 3 years. These last 3 years are the years that we have a lot more data on and where PGA Tour players were playing in the field as well. Prior to that, this was an event on the DP World Tour as well, which Min Woo Lee won in 2021, Aaron Rai won in 2020, and Bert Wiesberger won in 2019. But the vast majority, just because we have a lot more data on these last 3 years, the context that I'm going to talk about the golf course in is generally with the data of the last 3 years. And what's interesting about the data from the last 3 years is that you do have a pretty wide scoring spectrum. And so I'm going to say this once for the people in the back. And, again, this is going to be applicable for Royal Portrush next week as well. These 2 weeks, I'm sorry, but you have to pay attention to the weather, okay? If the weather switches and you get screwed by the weather, of course that's going to happen sometimes. But if you want to really do your best job handicapping these events, you can't just say, oh, I'm betting futures and picking these players, and if I get screwed by the weather, then it's not my fault. Yes, it is your fault. You're competing against people like at ISN, we are going to pay attention to the weather and make our decisions about how the golf course is going to play based on the weather. And this week is a golf course where you are never going to see more scoring variance on a course in America based on wind. I mean, the difference between the scoring average in the Robert McIntyre year last year, when it was pretty calm and not that windy, and the Xander year in 2022, where it was brutal over the weekend, is 3 strokes per round. 3 strokes per round is huge. That changes like the player profile that you're looking for. A lot of the times on these PGA Tour golf courses, if you get some wind, if you don't get some wind, the difference in scoring average is a half a stroke, a quarter of a stroke. It doesn't change the player profile that you're looking for. If this golf course is calm and has no wind versus if this golf course is brutal and it's gusting like crazy, that changes like the skill profile. That changes the percentage of the strokes gained pie. So let me talk about what the weather's going to be this week and how we break down the golf course if it's windy versus if it's calm, because it's a different golf course when it's windy versus when it's calm. And again, the scoring profile is going to change. Just a couple loose ends to tie up. Design, it's in North Berwick, Scotland, designed by Tom Doak in 2008, par 70, 7,293 yards. It doesn't always play that way. Fairways, fescue grass, rough fescue grass, green fescue grass. And just actually, I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to dive right into the golf course. So this is a modern Tom Doak designed golf course in 2008. And this golf course, I've never played it before, but in the architecture community, it actually takes a lot of heat, despite the fact that Tom Doak is widely recognized as a genius in the golf course architecture community. And, just along with Bill Core and Ben Crenshaw and Gil Hands, the best modern architect doing it. I mean, post Golden Age, Tom Doak, I would say, is the preeminent master of golf course architecture in the post Golden Age era, and his writing on golf course architecture is the most important and influential golf course writing and golf course design in the world. So I can't say enough good things about Tom Doak in terms of his mind and his impact on the architecture community and his golf courses as well. There's certain people that don't like Tom Doak golf courses because they can be too hard and kind of quirky and difficult around the greens. And I'm not one of those people. That's never been my experience with Tom Doak golf courses. I absolutely love every Tom Doak golf course that I've played and most of his redesigns as well. But this golf course, in terms of Tom Doak's resume, is not considered one of his finest golf courses. I still think there's cool elements of it. And if I went to Scotland, I would 100% prioritize going to see it. But, it doesn't have the charm of a North Berwick or Muirfield, which, it gets compared to geographically because it's very close to North Berwick and Muirfield. And a golf course designed in 2008 is never going to be able to replicate the charm of, golf courses like Muirfield and North Berwick, which are considered two of the most beloved golf courses on the planet. But any Doak golf course, in my opinion, and you will see in the putting numbers, because, this is a lot of the similarities in my breakdown of Renaissance Club, you're going to hear me say the same. You would have heard me say the same thing about Memorial Park. And this is why I believe that any Doak golf course is better than 90% of the golf courses that we see week to week on the PGA Tour. And this statistically has been the hardest golf course. It's been in the top 10, kind of averaged around the toughest golf course to gain strokes putting on the PGA Tour over the last 3 years. And that is really generally because a couple of factors. First of all, it's really tough to putt in the wind. Everybody talks about how ball striking gets affected in the wind. And of course, ball striking gets tremendously affected in the wind. But putting gets a lot harder in the wind as well. Like if you've ever played golf overseas, there's nothing more difficult than, trying to make a 5 to 10 footer when the wind is blowing like crazy and you're kind of on a slower, bumpier green where it's not like a true bent grass green where, you kind of just hit your line and the ball is going to run true. It's more like putting on Poa annua. You sometimes for a 5-footer, you're going to have to step up there and make a confident stroke because the greens are a little bit slower. And so the combination of the fact that Tom Doak just designs golf courses with a lot of internal contouring and a lot of just really interesting slopes and breaks and attention to detail on his greens, combined with the fact that these greens are slower and bumpier and you're going to have to deal with some wind. It's like, one of the toughest putting courses that you're going to see on the PGA Tour. And that has been that's played a big impact on strokes gained over the last 3 years. I think people are going to look at the data. If you are a data nerd, you're going to look at the data and be like, this is one of the biggest putting contests on the PGA Tour. Putting has played such a massive role out of the strokes game pie. And I would say, yes, that's true. And putting is very important this week, especially if you get calmer conditions. But I would say, be careful with just labeling this as a big time putting contest, despite the data showing that over the last 3 years. You really need at least a 5 to 10 year sample size to get a great picture of how the golf course is going to have a relationship with strokes gained. And so I would think over the next couple of years that we see the Renaissance Club, the percentage of the strokes gained pie that is putting will slightly go down, whether it's windy or it's not. It's just we've had only 3 years of this full data, and it's happened to produce like just big time putters have gone out there and separated. And I don't think if we look at this golf course 5 to 10 years from now, it's going to be quite that putting dependent. So again, putting's a big aspect of this golf course, but not quite the way, in my opinion, that the data would frame it, at least over the last 3 years. And a little bit more about the golf course. The site was an old pine forest, and I think that's why some people may look at it as a little bit manufactured and contrived. It doesn't feel natural the way some of the greatest links golf courses do. Like, I imagine, I've never played golf in Scotland, so I'm going off of what people have told me. But one of the things that people tell me about some of the great golf courses in Scotland is they feel so natural to the land, right? Where you just feel like the architect at the time, which is true, an old Tom Morris or a Harry Colt or whatever, they didn't have the tools that Tom Doak had in 2008 to build a golf course and move a whole bunch of earth. So at a golf course like Muirfield or North Berwick, you get that incredibly natural feel where the golf course feels like it fits the land perfectly, and the greens and the bunkers are kind of perfectly molded into the land. Whereas the Renaissance Club, it feels like a lot of dirt was moved to create this golf course. And it's interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy because Tom Doak is a very minimalist designer, but based on this site, he had to move dirt to really make it a golf course. So it is one of his more manufactured and unnatural golf courses, but I don't think that's a fault of Tom Doak to make it a great golf course with a bunch of great pop bunkers and a bunch of humps and hollows. Based on the site, he had to use modern technology to do that. And what he produced was a 7,300 yard course, but it typically gets set up differently from day to day. So I would not get overly wrapped up with specific yardages, but it's got 5 par 3s and 3 par 5s. 2 of the par 3s are quite short, 147 yards and 161 yards, while the other 3 all measure over 200 yards. So, and depending on the wind, all 3 of the par 5 should be reachable. None of them are short, but none of them are true 3-shot holes unless played straight into the wind. 7 of the par 4s measure over 445 yards, which is a fairly large number. It's a long golf course. Like if all conditions are equal and you get no wind, guys are going to score easily. Like it's very similar to Memorial Park, right? Where the golf course is meant to be played firm and fast, and you're going to get the best version and the true realization of how great Tom Doak's greens are if the golf course plays firm and fast. But if the golf course doesn't play firm and fast, then what happens on Tom Doak golf courses are driver putter. And that's exactly what you saw at the Houston Open this year. And that is somewhat what you've seen at the Renaissance Club last year when it played easier. The year that Bob McIntyre won, the golf course played 1.3 strokes under par. He won at 18 under par. So not a true birdie fest. But it is it's a driver at that Tom Doak golf courses, when they're not super, super firm and fast, driver putter. It's power putter. And I'll talk about the weather this week, and why the weather, of course, is so important this week is because the nature of the golf course and the required skill set that we really want changes based on how windy and difficult it is. And when the golf course is easy, like last year, and I'm looking at the weather for this week, and it looks pretty easy again. Like if you look at the wind finder forecast for North Berwick, where the golf course is, you're not getting much rain, so it is at least going to be firm and fast. But Thursday, going to be kind of a tougher day. The scoring average should be around even par on Thursday when you have wind gusts around 20 miles per hour. But Friday, the maximum wind gust you're going to get is 9 miles per hour. It's completely calm. So Friday should be a day where they go out and the scoring average is minus 1.75 or 2 strokes under par. And then the same deal Saturday and Sunday. Barely any wind. So Thursday is the day that, as of right now in North Berwick, a lot can change. And that's why, hopefully you join the Discord so you get day-to-day updates on the weather. But looking at it right now, I think it's going to be quite easy. I think the scoring average is going to be around what we saw last year, maybe a little bit even easier than last year. That could change in a second, so don't hold me to that. I'm recording this at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, okay? And I could look at the weather in Scotland, and it could change. That's what I'm saying. You got to be with us on Wednesday night for these next 2 weeks. How I feel about the golf course, my breakdowns, my pool could change dramatically over the next 3 days. But as we sit here on Sunday morning, I think that it's going to be easy. I just think you have one hard day. So don't freak out if the scores are high on Thursday. But the way that I'm looking at it, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there's barely any wind. We are talking maximum wind gusts of like 12 miles per hour, barely any wind. And so as it sits here on Sunday morning, my scoring average prediction would be at least to what Bobby Mack got to, which is 18 under par. I'm going to say, the lowest scoring average that we've ever had on this golf course is 18 under par, which was a Minwoo Lee playoff with Thomas Dietrich and Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm going to say, just because the golf course plays firm and fast, and even in calm conditions, this is not a golf course that I think would get completely torn to shreds just because Tom Doak's architecture is so interesting and difficult around the greens. And even though there's not much of a missed fairway penalty here, and you can still kind of bomb away and putt it, the golf course is long. It's a long iron intensive golf course. The proximity buckets that you want to be looking at this week, and my whole model is up on betspurtsgolf.com, but the proximity buckets that you want to be looking at this week are 175 to 200, 200 yards plus is accounting for around 57, 60% of approach shots. So I'm going to say, as it stands now, scoring average of minus 1.5 and winner at 19 under par. Or excuse me, I'm going to say winner at 20 under par, because actually the lowest that they've ever got to, I'm mistaken. I wasn't looking at 2019 when Bernd Wiesberger won at 22 under par in a playoff over Benjamin Hebert. When you get no conditions and it's completely calm, guys can get to 22 under par on this golf course. And I'm going to say if all 4 days were no wind, then I would predict the winning score 22 under par. Thursday is still going to be difficult, so I'm going to say 20 under par because of the difficulty of Thursday. But the way that I'm looking at this golf course is it is a driver putter golf course that is going to break down in these conditions very much like a Scottish aesthetic version of Memorial Park. Okay. Like you look at Memorial Park, and that is Tom Doak's Augustified, golf course. And this is Tom Doak's Linksy golf course. But the questions being asked are very much the same. Okay, between Memorial Park and the Renaissance Club under these conditions. Obviously, it's different. If you get a ton of crazy wind, that changes a lot of stuff and fairways become impossible to hit. And then that changes the way that you want to look at driving. But under these conditions, the rough penalty is relatively low. And there is a bit of a luck component with the driving here, where you really just need to stay out of the pot bunkers. But it's a distance over accuracy golf course when the conditions are like this. This is a driver heavy golf course where you can kind of bomb away with reckless abandon. And the way that I would recommend playing this golf course strategically, if I was advising a PGA Tour player, is I would say, listen, if you try and like perfectly avoid the pot bunkers, I don't think that's a recipe for success here. I think you can gain a real advantage by hitting the ball long on this golf course because, you're going to get a lot of run out, and it's a long enough golf course where, if you can take advantage and be able to reach these par fives in 2 strokes, then, you're going to have a real leg up on the field. And, if you drive it into a pot bunker or you get a terrible lie in the rough, that's just rub of the green. That's just links golf. And that's going to happen to some players on this golf course, which may make predicting strokes gained off the tee at this golf course a little bit more difficult and unpredictable. But I'm favoring distance over accuracy here. Although it is the type of golf course as well, where if you are insanely accurate, and I talked about this, it happens every year at Memorial Park, and Oakmont was another good example of this, where even on a distance biased golf course, there's still about 3 players on the PGA Tour that are so freaking accurate that they can even show up to driver heavy distance-based golf courses and gain significantly off the tee with their accuracy. If you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you probably know the 3 guys I'm talking about already, but it's Colin Morikawa, it's Aaron Rai, it's Corey Connors. I'd also throw Russell Henley into that bucket as well, but he's not in the field this week. And unsurprisingly, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, and Aaron Rai have all had success at the Scottish Open before. So if you are an insane, I'm still, just for the broader field, I'm still taking distance over accuracy, but there are a couple guys where, they are so freaking accurate that they're totally viable to win this event. But again, 70% greens in regulation percentage when it's easier. And last year, and I think it is even going to play easier than last year, it was the 14th easiest course on the PGA Tour. And strokes gained putting and strokes gained off the tee were the only positive correlations. And that leaderboard last year under easy conditions was a lot of driver putter. Bob Mack, ultimate driver putter guy, although he's a phenomenal long iron player as well. And long iron play is important this week. Adam Scott, this current version of Adam Scott, big driver putter guy. What do you know? A little Oakmont correlation as well. Another golf course that I talked about in a lot of ways is like a big driver. And the reason why I don't think Oakmont is a perfect comp, but the reason why you could somewhat maybe see a similar leaderboard or the same guys playing well at Oakmont as you do at a golf course like the Renaissance Club is because it's super driver heavy and the putting is so hard. Like the putting at Oakmont is so freaking difficult and impossible that you are going to see on that leaderboard, both at the Renaissance Club and at Oakmont, a lot of guys that murder the ball off the tee, like Bob Mack and Adam Scott still has a ton of distance and are great putters and can navigate really tricky, difficult greens. That's Bob Mack and Adam Scott. You know who else it is? Wyndham Clark, who's played great here, big driver putter guy. Sung JM, this version of Sung JM, huge driver putter guy where, he's super accurate off the tee as well. He's not quite as accurate as Morikawa, Rye, or Connors, but he is quite accurate as well. Ludwig, Sahith Theegala, and then you still do have the traditional, like hyper accurate off the tee and good iron players like Morikawa and Aaron Rye when the golf course has been more difficult in the past. And again, I will just say as a misnomer, if you start to look at the weather forecast and you start to see crazy wind and the conditions are changing and it's not going to be 20 under par and you're not going to get a greens in regulation percentage at 70%, then obviously the breakdown of the golf course changes and the types of players that you want to be looking for is going to change. It's going to place more of an emphasis on total driving and accuracy as opposed to just pure distance. It's going to take a little bit off of just pure putting with a lower greens in regulation percentage, and you're going to have to look at guys that are better scramblers and a little bit more around the green. But the way that it stands now with these conditions, I am looking for this week the three main things. If I'm going to dumb this down to a very elementary level, I'm actually going to say there are four things that are really important this week, and then we'll get out of here with our early leans. Power off the tee. Very important in these conditions. You can gain you don't have to be, but you can gain because, it's like if you're short and inaccurate, you're not going to get totally screwed on this golf course with the missed fairway penalty, but you can gain a real edge from being long. Putting, okay? And there are a lot of ways that I would measure putting this week, okay? And my model is posted to BetSperts Golf, so you can see it and use it. But like, you want to look at guys who putted well in the UK and Ireland in the past. Okay, so we do have some data at some of these Open Championships and Scottish Opens where you can identify who are the guys that have putted well on these slow, bumpy greens across the pond. I'll give them to you right now on the podcast. These are the best. These guys over the last couple of years have been the best putters, and again, it's like a 20 round sample size, so you're not going to get a crazy amount here, but the guys that have putted the best, minimum 4 rounds on, these slow, bumpy greens across the pond. And it's interesting. It's like a lot of these names putt amazingly well on the East Coast or in America as well, because, when you get to Scotland, it's like you have to put a bigger stroke on the ball sometimes. So yeah, there's going to be some random guys that just randomly putt better across the pond on slower greens. But like, if you're a really good putter and have a really good stroke in America, I mean, that should translate generally to being a good putter across the pond as well. Max Grazerman, Sam Burns, Harry Hall, Jacob Bridgman, Denny McCarthy. Those are the top 5 putters in UK and Ireland, at least over a 4-round sample size before at an Open Championship / the Renaissance Club. And guess what? If you were telling me to give you the 5 best putters on the PGA Tour, I would probably say Grazerman, Burns, Harry Hall, Bridgman, Denny McCarthy. So sometimes the data actually does make sense. But like, for example, Corey Connors has putted really well across the pond. And Corey Connors is actually an underrated putter just in general, but Corey Connors has putted well on these greens before in the past, ironically enough. So anyway, I would look at how players have putted in UK, Ireland, even though it's a small sample size. I would look at how guys have putted on difficult greens. Like, how do guys putt on greens that are just really hard to gain strokes putting on? And they may be for different reasons. It may be because they're super fast, or it may be because they're bumpy Poa annua, but this is just it's the number 1 golf course in terms of difficulty of putting inside 5 feet. And so I just want to identify guys that on really tough Poa annua greens can still gain a bunch of strokes with the putter. I'll give you those guys as well. These have been the best. These are the best guys putting on difficult greens. Oh, actually, I apologize, guys. I made a mistake. The guys that I just gave you for UK and Ireland, that's this category. That's difficult greens. So, those guys, Grazerman, Burns, Hall, Bridgman, Denny McCarthy, those are the guys that have been best. Anytime you go to like golf courses where it's difficult to gain strokes putting, like, a good example of this is a lot of the West Coast golf courses. The putters that have actually been the best across the pond, again, over a limited sample size, you're going to get some overlap. Sam Burns, Matt Fitzpatrick, who I think may win the golf tournament, Harris English, Adam Scott, Tom Kim, Brian Harmon, Mackenzie Hughes, Harry Hall. So again, a lot of overlap, but guys like Matt Fitzpatrick and Brian Harmon, part of the reason why they play well at the Scottish Open and in the UK Ireland is because they're, great putters. They're great putters on these slow, bumpy greens. So putting, power off the tee, long iron play, like proximity 175 yards plus. And then obviously, the most experience that you can get being comfortable playing across the pond. So in terms of comp courses this week, the comps that you really want to look at are just for American golf courses, just Memorial Park, really. I mean, Memorial Park is the one, architecture-wise, that's going to have the most in common with the Renaissance Club in terms of the architecture and the required skill set. And then the other golf courses that you want to look at, and not because every Open Championship venue is anywhere remotely like this in terms of required skill set. A lot of Open Championship venues, although I think St. Andrews is a decent comp because that's really driver putter, but a lot of Open Championship venues aren't driver putter golf courses, but just getting that comfortability across the pond, with these playing conditions in the wind, you want to find guys that have been great at Open Championships. So anyway, to finish it off, I will give you my model, the top 20 guys. Here we go. Okay, number one, Scotty Scheffler. And I just want to say one thing about Scotty Scheffler as it pertains to these next 2 weeks. Because I dove into this a little bit. I think that the narrative that Scotty Scheffler has a lot to prove and is a bad player across the pond is a little bit overrated. Okay. If you are comparing Scotty Scheffler to, if you're comparing Scotty Scheffler's performance in the Open Championship compared to his performance at the Masters, yeah, okay, of course, he hasn't had the success that he has at the Masters, nor now at the PGA Championship or US Open either. But Scotty Scheffler's played in 4 Open Championships, and he has an 8th, a 21st, a 23rd, and a 7th. He's actually hit the ball insanely well across the pond. Scotty Scheffler's ball striking at Troon last year was insane. He just didn't make any putts. Scotty Scheffler's ball striking at St. Andrews, insane. He just didn't make any putts. Okay, so I think there's not some type of thing that is preventing Scotty Scheffler from being able to have success across the pond other than his putter. He's still brought his ball striking over. In terms of his ball striking off of this turf and in the wind, he's been an unbelievable ball striker. The question worth interrogating for Scotty Scheffler is, do these greens fuck with him? Because he hasn't really shown at the Scottish Open yet or the Open Championship yet. He hasn't putted well across the pond. The ball striking's been fine. The ball striking, there's nothing to be concerned about in terms of his ball striking being up to Scotty Scheffler's standards. But the question that I think we will find out a lot to over the next 2 weeks, because Scotty Scheffler is now having his best putting season of his career. This is the best that Scotty Scheffler has evolved this season as a putter, and we are getting the best putting version of Scotty Scheffler than we have seen thus far in his short career. How is he going to putt the next 2 weeks on these slower, bumpier greens in the wind? That's going to be the answer of whether or not, he wins this tournament and the Scottish Open, is how does he putt? But if you're looking for a chink in the armor with Scotty Scheffler, I'm going to give you the two-pronged answer of it, because I do think both things can be true at the same time. I think it's a bad, uninformed, non-ball knowing take to say that Scotty Scheffler has some crazy UK, Ireland links thing that's preventing him from playing well on these golf courses across the pond from a ball striking perspective. But if you're looking for a reason to fade him in DFS, and I don't know what his ownership will be compared to Rory McIlroy, who's a great Open Championship player and has had tons of, and I mean, the ultimate driver putter guy. I know Rory's not typically thought of as an elite putter, but Rory McIlroy can putt great at times, and has had tremendous amounts of success on driver putter golf courses, and obviously has a win at the Scottish Open and another 4th at the Scottish Open. Very curious to see whether people, but he hasn't been playing as well as Scotty Scheffler, so I'm very curious to see whether people are interested in Rory or Scotty more this week. I'd give the edge to Scotty, I think. They both finished 6th at the Travelers. I think Scotty looked a little better than Rory at the Travelers. Rory's iron play is still a little untrustable for me. But then let's go 3 through 20. Corey Connors, who just kind of breaks everything by his accuracy. How is Corey Connors finishing third in my model on a driver putter course. Well, he gains tons of strokes off the tee on driver heavy driver putter golf courses. And he actually is a really underrated putter. Corey Connors has been putting pretty good this season, and he's a great iron player, a great long iron player. Obviously, I was really heavy on Oakmont, and I haven't. He has he suffered a hand injury at Oakmont that's forced him to withdraw, and he didn't play in the Travelers. So I'm probably not going to bet him coming off a hand injury like that. But based on course fit and the way that Corey Connors can still hit a million fairways on this golf course and gain strokes off the tee with his accuracy and continue to gain strokes putting on these greens and his long iron upside, like don't care whether he withdrew last week. If he's in the field and giving it a go, I'm going to play Corey Connors on this golf course. I just don't think I'm going to bet him. 4, 5, 6, really interesting players because they're going to be priced the same way. And you're going to have to choose in DFS between these 3 players who you think is the best option. One of them I think could contend and win the golf tournament. The other is going to kind of be whatever, maybe. And I think another one might be a disappointment, but I'm talking about Xander, Colin, Fleetwood. Those are the 3 guys that are going to be right behind Rory and Scotty at the top of the odds board. I love this odds board this week also because it's like there's maybe a chink in the armor with Scotty Scheffler where you don't. A lot of events with Scotty Scheffler, it's like, oh, fuck this. Scotty's just going to win. We have some hope on the West Coast or in Scotland because he hasn't totally putted well here. So, it's just a great board. Like, I actually don't get the sense that either Rory or Scotty are going to win this event. So if you don't think that Rory and Scotty are going to win, you should be able to get some really great numbers on some other guys a little farther down the board. And Xander, Morikawa, and Fleetwood, I'm running short on time, so I'm not going to dive into the nuances of, why one might play better than the other. But those 3 guys, very interesting this week. Number 7, Ryan Fox. Number 8, Bobby Mack. My hero. Do I think Bobby Mack can almost win this event 3 years in a row? I don't know, but it's a tremendous golf course for him. He's playing great golf. 9, Victor Hovland. 10, Matt McNeely, who I love. Shout out BK. 11, Nico Højgaard, who I love this week. I like both Højgaard brothers this week. It's a great spot for the Højgaards. 12, Thorbjorn Olesen. 13, Sam Burns. Best putter in the world pretty much right now. 14, Victor Perez. He was huge for us at the U.S. Open at Oakmont. He's played well at the Genesis before. That's a great sleeper play for you. 15, Ludwig. I think 2 guys that I'm kind of buying on over the last 5-6 weeks of the season are Ludwig and Xander. I think Ludwig and Xander, you may not hear from them this week. You may not hear from them at the Open Championship, but I think both Ludwig and Xander are going to have a really good FedEx Cup playoffs and finish the season on a high note for a year that for both of them has been somewhat disappointing in my eyes. I think it's a tremendous golf course for Ludwig, and I think he's playing better than his numbers and results would suggest. I may bet Ludwig this week. 16, Adam Scott. 17, Thomas Dietrich. I love Thomas Dietrich. He's played great at this golf course before. Ideal driver putter guy. 18, Fitzpatrick, your winner. 19, Alex Smalley. 20, Max Grazerman. I don't want to, pump him up or glaze him too much because, we're all going to bet him in our Discord on Sunday evening. So if you agree with us on this Matt Fitzpatrick thing, then I would suggest just join ISN so you can figure out what we're talking about and how we're betting it in the Discord. But Fitz, I love Fitz this week. He's played great here. He's played here 6 times. He's got a 6 miscut, 39th, 42nd, and 14th, and runner up. So, out of the 6 times he plays, here's 3 top 15s, a playoff loss, and a 6th. the irons are coming around. The irons are coming around with Fitz finally. He's had a pretty disappointing season, but there's been absolutely some flashes of brilliance in there. And I think when Fitz gets going and starts to fight, I mean, he's won a lot on links golf courses in the past. Like he's won, the Johnny Walker before at St. Andrews, a big time driver putter golf course. And he's coming off a 17th at the Travelers, where he gained significantly approach off the tee, 8th at the Rocket Mortgage, where he gained significantly approach off the tee. Just hasn't totally found that putter yet, but the putter was amazing for him at the US Open, another golf course with incredibly difficult greens. Oh, let's also go to another somewhat driver putter golf course, the last driver putter golf course that we played, Quail Hollow, T8 at Quail Hollow, where he was an awesome middle to long iron player, awesome putter as well. He's got the links resume. He's got the Renaissance Club resume. He's starting to flush the irons. He's driving the ball well. There's been a ton of putting upside recently where he led the field in putting at the US Open. Fitz is winning the Genesis Scottish Open. And that's going to be it for me on this podcast. We obviously went 90 minutes today because I did like a 30-ish minute intro on what we got cooking going ahead at ISN, but I need to get out of here. I'm going to sit in my car and write my Renaissance Club article for the next 2 or 3 hours with some Hamptons traffic back to New York City. But good luck to your lineups at the John Deere. I'm certainly will have a lot to root for this afternoon. If you want to be part of the party and win some more money over these next couple of weeks, both in tennis and in golf, InsideSportsNetwork.com is where you want to join. And remember, if you want to sign up just for a week, next week, we will do a free free week at ISN. So, great opportunity to get your foot in the door and see what we're about. Cheers. Happy 4th of July.